Hello, everyone. I'm Dwayne Bonifer in the Lindsey Wilson University Office of Public Relations, and this is The View from the Hill, the podcast of Lindsey Wilson University. Every week during the academic year, The View from the Hill features conversations with some of the people who help create the dynamic living, learning environment that serves the educational needs of every Lindsey Wilson student every day. In this 16th podcast of the 2025-2026 school year, we'll chat with the voice of Blue Raider athletics, the inimitable Chris Wells, who will review the fall sports season as well as discuss the winter season of Lindsey Wilson athletics. Chris Wells has spent more than a quarter of a century at Lindsey Wilson. A Blue Raider alumnus, he's been an award-winning sports information director, assistant athletics director, and he's currently Lindsey Wilson's associate director of athletics. He's also served as the longtime play-by-play voice for several Lindsey Wilson athletic teams, including football, which just concluded its 2025 season. Chris is going to look back on the fall season of Lindsey Wilson sports and bring us up to date about what's happening with Lindsey Wilson winter sports teams. Chris, the Blue Raider football team was one of the best in the NAIA this year. It returned to the postseason, won the Mid-South Conference, and was near the top in several statistical categories. Although Lindsey Wilson lost in the quarterfinal round, this was a very good season for Blue Raider football.
Yeah, it was a great year for football. It was a bounce-back year for this football team after missing the playoffs for a couple years in a row. And new philosophy, I think, on the offensive side of the football really paid dividends. And, you know, we've always been really good at our defense ever since Phil Kleckler came to town, even before then, but especially since Phil Kleckler came to town. And then, obviously, he was elevated to the head coach, and Daniel Cotter's continued to carry the torch of the defensive side. And it was just, I think it was complementary football. I think that's what really helped this team. You know, you didn't see one team out there for extended periods of time. They complemented one another, and a lot of times in the past couple of years, the defense has spent too much time on the field, and I think they got tired and ultimately not successful in not only the game, but just continuing to move the football and potentially putting up points. So it was a good year. As I mentioned, anytime you make the playoffs, it's a good year. Anytime you win the conference, it's a good year. Obviously, it was a disappointing way to finish the season at Grandview, but Grandview, they've won 25 games in a row, and you know, they're defending national champions. I think they're the prohibited favorites to win it again. They call it a football championship series for a reason. It's not a tournament. You go where you can go to basically, there's a lot of travel restrictions on what the NAI does, where they send teams and where they can drive to, as opposed to having to fly, things of that nature. So unfortunately for Lindsey Wilson, we played Grandview a little bit earlier than we would have hoped to at their place. I was there. It was cold and snowy and windy, and so it was a tough afternoon. They're used to playing in those elements. We got some student athletes from not only here in the state of Kentucky, but also down in Alabama and Georgia that probably wasn't used to playing in those type of conditions. But it doesn't take away from the season that we had. You win double-digit games and win your conference and get to the quarterfinals, the playoffs. You've had a successful year, and I just think that's going to be a stepping stone because we bring a lot of people back next year.
Lindsey Wilson had a new offensive look this year. Were you surprised at how good it looked?
I wasn't. I really wasn't, because we saw that same type of philosophy on the offensive side of the football with our previous coach and how successful it was. We won a national championship with that type of philosophy. You know, the philosophy is you get the ball into your playmakers' hands, and that's exactly what we did. Tay Saunders was fantastic all season long. The AFCA just named him first-team All-American and very deserving. I think offensive line was a question coming in, but it was anchored by Larry Montgomery, who's also an All-American from the AFCA, and I was thinking volleyball there for a moment. But that unit just really, I think it surprised some people around the conference and around the NAI, because we had kind of taken a step back on that side of the football. but it didn't surprise me at all. I had watched Jay Bright's offense at Bethel the last couple of years. That's where he came from. I knew what kind of offense, what kind of philosophy he had to getting the ball in the playmakers' hands, and I knew it could be successful here. We just had to make sure we had playmakers, and we did. And, the additions of Kaya Sherrard and Max Gainey and, Seth Phillips at tight end, all those elements, Stephen Mack at running back backing up Tay Saunders, all those elements really produced a fantastic season.
Also went to the postseason this year in 3 other sports. Men's, women's soccer, and volleyball. Volleyball did it with a new coach.
Yeah, they did. Josh Kreiner came in and did an excellent job. Anytime you can win 26, 27 volleyball games, that's going to be a pretty good season. It was good to see them back in the national tournament as well after a couple of years not making it. And it's just going to feed that hunger for the student athletes that come back the upcoming year or next year to get back to that position. We had to go on the road and play in that first round in a hostile environment, and it wasn't our day, but it was a really good season. And I think it's a good first step back. Jacob Pep kind of got us back on that last year, and then he had to resign for personal issues, and Josh Kreiner came in and elevated the program just a little bit more, and I just think that it's going to keep growing. I know he's excited about his recruiting class coming in for next year, and this was a good first step in getting the program back to that national championship level that we were accustomed to several years ago.
Men's and women's soccer were back in the national tournament. Men lost in a really tough match here at Lindsey Wilson in the first, the second round of the NAI tournament.
Yeah, soccer is such a strange sport. You can dominate a match and you can lose 1-0. You can outshoot your opponents 17-1, but if that one gets through and the other 17 they do not, you're going to lose. So soccer is, I don't want to say it's a coin flip sport because it's a beautiful sport. It's one that I've grown to love. A kid growing up in Burkesville didn't have a lot of exposure to soccer, but once I came to Lindsey Wilson with the history that we've had, I've just grown to love everything about it. But it is that sport where you can dominate a side, you can dominate the other team and still lose, and I think that's what makes it such a difficult sport. I feel like we were the better club. Even that day against Ottawa, I watched it, but it just so happens that they found the back of the net, we didn't, and so they moved on to the final sight, which is disappointing, but it doesn't take away from a really good season.
And then women's soccer made it down to the final sight this year.
Yeah, not only did they go on the road and beat a Southeastern team that was ranked to make it to the final sight, but they did it in a fashion that where a lot of people just didn't think that they had that kind of chance to do it. A lot of people just dismissed this women's soccer team as a potential national contender. And while I don't think we're at the national level to win a championship yet. You can see signs of us rebounding from a really mediocre last couple of years. And I'm excited about the future. I know Coach Drew Burwash is excited about what this team did and what the next year's teams can do as we continue to get back to where Lindsey Wilson women's soccer. I mean, we've won 4 national championships on that side of the on women's soccer, so we know how to do it. And Drew's won all 4 of them. He knows how to do it. And I think we're getting back to that point.
And the other new face we had this fall had a new face in cross country.
Yeah, there's been some turnover there. I know Anthony Thompson, who is the director of our track and field cross country, is excited about where this program can be. One of the things that he talks about and we talk about, cross country and track and field is a unique sports because if you're good in track and field, good in cross country, that translates over into track and field with a lot of your distance. So it's important and it's smart to recruit good student athletes for that program that can only help you for our track and field program as well. And so I know Coach Thompson's really looking at that and trying to make sure that we do that on both those sports. And you had mentioned that men's and women's soccer, football, and volleyball all went to the national tournament. We had a cross-country participant at the Nationals as well, And so that allowed us to be one of 5 schools throughout the NAIA that had at least one participant in every national championship that was contested in the fall. So that's a pretty impressive thing, and the future's bright in both those programs.
You're listening to the Lindsey Wilson View from the Hill podcast. I'm Dwayne Bonifer in the Lindsey Wilson Office of Public Relations. I'm talking to Lindsey Wilson Associate Director of Athletics, Chris Wells. He's bringing us up to speed on what's been happening this fall in Blue Raider athletics. And don't forget that your source on the World Wide Web for all things Blue Raider related is lindseyathletics.com. You can also follow Lindsey Wilson Athletics on X, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, where there are a myriad of Blue Raider-related accounts. Now let's get back to my conversation with the voice of Blue Raider Athletics, Chris Wells. Chris, we're here in December and kind of knee-deep in winter sports, men's and women's basketball. It seems like they're almost halfway through their schedule at this point. Not quite the case, but they've both played a lot of games.
Yeah, and it's easily past the third waypoint of the season. And we in the sports information world call this crossover season, that we just came to the end of fall championships ending. In fact, I think 2 nights ago was the last championship in the NAIA fall championships. And so it's crossover season. That means one season is, overlaps with another. And that's a tough one. The other crossover season is February, March, when the winters are ending and the springs are starting. So both those are difficult, but it just makes it that much more exciting because there's really not any nights off. Because if you don't have soccer going, you might have basketball going, you might have football or volleyball or anything, wrestling. So there's a lot going on, and basketball's off to a good start on both men's and women's side. Both with winning records and both excited to once we get back from holiday break. They still have a couple of games left in this semester, but once we get back holiday break, it's right into conference play. And Mid-South Conference on both sides of the basketball, men and women, is so tough. It's such a grind throughout the January and February into conference tournament play. And I would contest that there's not a more complete conference from top to bottom. Now, there may be conferences that have, better 1, 2, and 3 in the NAI than the Mid-South, but there won't be a conference that will have the type of depth that the Mid-South will have. Whoever finishes 6th and 7th in this conference, they're going to be finishing 1st or 2nd in a lot of other conferences in this NAI. So that's something that you got to strap them on every night and lace them up and try to survive sometimes, because that's how difficult this conference is.
What have you seen at this point in the men's and women's basketball teams that stand out or encouraging? Women certainly seem to have a sort of a well-balanced offensive attack right now.
Yeah, they've added they brought almost everybody back from last year. So you've got a lot of veterans. In fact, this core group of student athletes that Coach Weathington and Coach Duncan have put together have been there, freshman, sophomore. They've grown. They've taken their lumps through those freshman and sophomore years. Now they're juniors, and you can just see they mesh so well together. And then you added in a couple of really standout transfers from NCAA Division II basketball. And with that addition, especially on the interior, with Meadow Tisdale, she's just phenomenal in the middle, and she's a handful for any defender to try to stop. You've got some perimeter play that with Amelia Hodges coming back after the ACL from a year ago. She adds not only a veteran presence, not only ball handling, but also one of our better shooters, and it's just a good mix of fresh new faces. But that core that had so much promise when they came in as freshmen, now that they're upperclassmen, I really believe that they can deliver in what's a brutal Mid-South Conference.
Men's basketball team seems to be playing very selflessly. They seem to get along very well on the court. The games I've seen, and impressed with what Chris Starks has on the court.
Yeah, and they're really good shooters. I think this is one of the best perimeter shooting teams that I've seen Coach Starks bring in. But you know as well as I do, sometimes even if you are so successful behind the three-point arc, you're going to have off nights. And so that's been the problem in our in our 3 losses this season, is just making sure that when this person is off for the night, that they're not going 1 of 14 or whatever. And unfortunately, our last loss to Shawnee State over the weekend, that's what happened, is we just hit a cold spell. So when you rely so much on the perimeter like we can, now when you get hot, watch out. You can blow some teams out. And you can get back in games pretty quickly, but you also shoot yourself out. And I think that's what they're going through right now. Unlike the women's side, where there's a lot of veterans on this team, there's a lot of fresh or new faces on this men's basketball team, and they're still trying to learn how to play with one another. They'll get there. I'm confident of that. But they're off to a good start. I think they're 9-3 on the season, and a couple games before Christmas time. So I think it'll be. I think it's definitely a fun team to watch.
Talked about crossover seasons. It's going to be even a busier crossover season when winter and spring crossover this year. Going to be historic as well. Lindsey Wilson will be introducing its 29th varsity team. Women's flag football starts on February 21st, and then first game at Parnell Family Stadium, March 13th.
Yeah, is that not fun? I mean, it's a fun thing to even think about, really. Football while baseball is America's pastime, there's no doubt that football is probably the most watched sport that we have in the U.S. And with women's flag football, I'm excited to watch it because of what I've heard about it more than anything else. I've watched some of it, and I've watched a little bit of the practice, but I'm eager to watch them go through a season because it's supposed to be so fast paced. You can play a game in an hour. It takes 3 hours to play a men's football game, but you can get through a game in an hour. So you can play multiple games in one day. You can have, they have these jamborees or classics or whatever where 4, 5, 6 teams will come in and play over a 2-day period. I'm just excited about and really learning all the rules. The center is a critical part of the game, and it is in men's football as well. But the center in flag football can go out and catch a football. It just blows my mind, just because I'm so used to America with men's football. So I'm eager to see. Obviously, the quarterback is critical. The center's critical. Obviously, there's so many elements, but it's such a fast pace. There's zones in flag football where as soon as the ball touches the ground, it's dead. You got so many downs to get through a zone, and if it's early in the down, you don't want to get the first down. You want to touch the ball down right at the 1-yard line, so you have 3 downs to get to the next zone. It's just I'm eager to look for the strategy of playing just as much as the athleticism of our student athletes. So it's going to be fun.
And with a mathematician as the head coach,
that
has to be interesting.
Yeah, Chris Raggard, it's funny how he came to be our coach from the beginning, because he's a high school coach in Florida. He heard we were starting football. He reached out to Willis and just said, hey, if you need any help, yada, yada, yada. And so that just kind of materialized into a conversation that was like, and ultimately ended, hey, why don't you interview for a job? And so I think Chris is such a good guy. He is such a team player. This is the amazing part. Just a quick story. I'm watching the volleyball team play in the first round because we're hosting soccer at Parnell Family Stadium. And I'm watching it on one of our TV screens in one of our suites. And I look, and Willis was with me, and Joel Schneider, our associate SID, and I said, that looks like Raggart right there on the sideline. And no, he's not. Now, why would he drive all the way up there to I'm telling you, that looks just like. And come to find out, we sent him a text, hey, where are you? And he took a picture of the scoreboard. and sent it back. He was at the volleyball game because he loves Lindsey Wilson and wanted sport. He went out to Des Moines, Iowa. He was in the freezing cold during our Grandview game, watching, supporting our. That's the type of person he is, and that translates to your team. He loves this team, and they love him, and it's going to be fun. I'm excited to see. He's going to be a first-year program. I'm sure he'll take his lumps like every first-year program, but you know what? He is excited and confident in this group that he's put together, and we'll see how it goes.
March 13th will be the first Lindsey Wilson women's flag football game at Parnell Family Stadium. Make sure to circle that on your calendar. And that's going to do it for this 16th edition of The View from the Hill for the 2025-2026 school year. You can tell us what you like or don't like about this podcast by firing off an email to us at news@lindsey.edu. Be sure to encourage your friends, coworkers, family members, and associates and neighbors to subscribe to A View from the Hill. They can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and on the college's YouTube channel. Don't forget you can follow Lindsey Wilson Athletics over the internet by pointing your internet browser to lindseyathletics.com, your official home on the World Wide Web for all things Blue Raider related. We appreciate Chris Wells, the Associate Athletics Director of Lindsey Wilson, for joining us for this episode. And View from the Hill is produced by Shelby Burton. She's Lindsey Wilson's Assistant Director of Public Relations and Media Producer. And until our next edition, I'm Dwayne Bonifer in the Lindsey Wilson University Office of Public Relations. Thanks so much for listening. So long, everybody, and have a nice day.